Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatirons Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning. Welcome back, everybody, to the Flatirons Syndicate Podcast. We're here in the shop. We've got Mike Pettiford with us again of Go For It Services, driver extraordinaire. And so we've kind of alluded to it a handful of times, but I'm now daily driving an electric vehicle. And I know, Mike, as soon as you found out that I was daily driving an electric vehicle, your first words to me were, I think it was, "Are you okay?"
Yeah. Are you okay? Are you being abducted?
Yeah.
Okay. Blink 3 times
Yeah.
if you're here against your will.
Yep.
That was the first thing I said.
All of which the answers to were no. Everything is fine. And so the car in question that I'm driving is Model 3 Performance, the new 2024 Model 3 Performance. So
Right.
the updated one that now, 510 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, all the bells and whistles. The whistles have bells, all that sort of stuff. And so as soon as you found this out, you're like, well, we need to have a discussion because I really enjoy the EVs. You have driven a lot of different EVs.
I am the Iceman.
But you are the Iceman. You are all about
ice.
the combustion engine cars.
Yes.
So, as we are sitting now in the shop, Mike, you have now driven the Model 3 Performance.
Yes.
And you brought over your 2023 Golf R?
Right. Golf R.
So it's the Golf R. So this is the new one that has the paddle shift.
Yeah, the Mark 8.
Mark 8. So it's the newest chassis.
Yeah.
And so I drove it, not as spiritedly as you, but so we now have we've gone back and forth. They're even the same color.
Yeah, they are. And it was a fascinating experience for both of us because as we drive what we normally drive, we get used to that.
Yep.
And then when we get into something else, it's different.
Yeah.
So we get a really good gauge of how does this compare.
Yes.
And that was really cool.
It's always interesting to drive something else.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if you ever get the opportunity to drive a different car, like your buddy got a new car, whatever, it's always nice to jump in.
Unless it's a Pontiac Aztec and then just say, I'm good.
Well, because you might like it?
No.
Probably not.
You're not going to like it.
So the question is are EVs really better? And we kind of wanted to have a spirited discussion about this. So let's lay the groundwork, because I've really not driven a lot of EVs. I mean, I drove the Solterra. I've ridden in a couple of Teslas, all Model 3s, and then now I have the one that I am living with.
Right.
But you've driven a lot of electric cars.
Yeah.
So maybe off the top of your head, what have you driven?
Well, I've driven the Tesla Plaid. I've driven the Porsche Taycan Turbo S.
Okay.
Those were the two that I had to drive because they're so fast.
Yeah.
They're the fastest. And I wanted to see how the Porsche compared to the Tesla.
Yeah.
And I've driven a Model 3 before yours, the earlier ones when they first came out. And I've driven, Nissan Leafs. I don't even count that. It's what am I doing in this car?
Have you driven a golf cart? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right, let's move on. Yeah.
And as we've talked about before, there's two things that I love about EVs.
Okay.
When they're fully charged, I love the acceleration.
Yeah.
And I love the low center of gravity.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, better than ICE cars, certainly as well as ICE cars. The only thing I miss is the sound and the visceral experience, which is better in the ICE car. And it's just so linear that your brain doesn't get a chance to breathe at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so this is what I've now learned is that I am actually not a fan of the acceleration in the Tesla. I like that it goes quickly and that not a lot of time goes by, but like the physical experience is man, it's visceral. Like it feels like all the blood's rushing your brain, and like it's a weird feeling.
Well, when we were out on our test drive, we did a launch.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I didn't tell John. I just matted it.
Right.
And we went 0 to, I'll say, 60, wink, wink.
Yeah.
And, and John wasn't making any noise. And I'm like, John.
This was at full power. Well, it seems like it was full power because every time that we did it again, it was not quite as hard as that first time.
Right.
Still quick, but not as,
quite as.
Yeah. It's just I was not prepared and like, I mean I can't explain it. It's like if you're not ready for that experience.
Well, it's just weird. I mean, if you've ever hit your head and you've been not hard enough to hurt yourself, but just for a moment, maybe you saw a couple of stars.
Yeah.
And for a brief moment, you were disorientated, and then you were fine.
You get like a little bit of tunnel vision, even, and like my feet were tingling. Like it's like, what is happening? Yeah, it was weird.
I can no longer move my right arm. You know,
I didn't pass out. I did not pass out, Mike. I did not pass out.
Oh,
I don't know if I kind of felt like I was moving in that direction. Like and that's for like the Model S Plaid. Like if it's that much faster,
dude.
like
yeah,
it's I don't know.
And did you see the video on the McMurtry?
Oh, McMurtry Spearling?
Yes. It goes 0 to 60 in 1.4.
God.
Oh, dude. And the guy was disorientated after.
Yeah.
Because it has suction.
Yeah.
In addition. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
So, he was hitting probably, 4 Gs on takeoff.
Man.
Oh, dude.
One of my takeaway is like fighter pilots, they've got these compression suits, to like keep pressuring your legs to make sure that the blood doesn't rush out of your brain. Like I feel like if I'm really gonna go fast in this Tesla, I need compression
pressure
pants at least or something because it's just like wow, crazy. And so it's like, all right, so that's the parlor trick. Everybody knows that EVs go fast.
Yes.
But is there...
And the EV drivers know that they go fast.
Sure.
Because if you're next to one on the merge lane and you're in a Corvette and they're in a Rivian, they like to test you.
Sure. Well, that has been one of the questions to me is there anything else? Are they just a one-trick pony and that's it? Or is there...
Two-trick.
Well, and so, especially driving the Golf R back-to-back, they're not as dissimilar as you'd think.
Right.
There's a lot more commonality. And I think that was my concern with EVs. And there's been such talk and such a push for self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Which, the electronic cars, EVs, they're all moving in that direction. And my concern, a lot of my concern anyway, was, well, if they're focusing on that, then who cares about the driver's experience? Who cares about the steering feel? Who cares about the suspension?
We do.
Well, we do, yeah. But if it's just basically going to be a golf cart that will take you from point A to point B.
And that's where we're seeing the autonomous cars being used.
Right.
Like if you're between two hotels and there's a shuttle and it goes straight and it stops, autonomous vehicles can do that fine.
Sure, it's just but if there's no consideration for the driver, if there's not any thought to put in, steering feel and steering feedback, then that's where we're all in a bad spot because if more EVs come out and there's just nothing there for you.
Right.
But that's one of the things I've been impressed with the Model 3 is that there is some feel. Like you can feel the bumps, you can feel the road.
Yeah.
For me,
and they finally gave you a real steering wheel.
Steering wheel.
Look at
which
that.
Which is nice. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not the yoke and.
Yeah, I'm like, look at that.
Yeah, I do like having the whole steering wheel.
Yeah. I mean, of course, a lot of really expensive cars don't give you the full steering wheel.
Yeah, it's true.
If you buy a Hennessy F5, you don't get a full steering wheel.
Well, I think they're making it really very few turns lock to lock.
Yeah,
so in theory, you never have to let go.
It's faster. Yeah.
But I like that, and again, the steering feel from the Model 3 into the Golf R, it's not that different.
Yeah, I mean 2 turns lock to lock.
Yep.
On both cars. Turning radius was a little better on the Golf R, not dramatically better.
Yeah. The steering was, I'd say, a little bit lighter in the Golf R. It was a little bit heavier in the Tesla, and that was not on the heavy setting. So you can do a standard steering and a heavy steering. The standard one is enough, and I don't really want to
Yeah, no, you wouldn't want.
Like if I wanted to skip the gym, then I maybe would put it into the heavier steering. But I feel like there's plenty of feedback just on the standard.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So,
and I think you might have been a little surprised how quiet the Golf R was when we weren't accelerating, just at constant speed. I'm sure the Tesla was a little quieter, but it wasn't a lot quieter. I was kind of surprised.
And to qualify it, I mean, the Golf R is basically stock. I mean, it has a little bit more power, but just through programming, the car is 100% stock otherwise.
Except for the flash.
Yeah, stock mufflers, all that sort of thing.
Yep.
So there's a lot to enjoy in both of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I have come at it is like Model 3 is a lot more fun to drive than I had expected. But there's certainly some limitations in what you could do with it. And like one of the things we've talked about is, because you start to accelerate hard and it uses a lot of battery, the performance is not going to be the same like in a gasoline car where, from 100% full gas tank all the way down to the last drop. It's not, there's really no difference. And then the EVs, you really can feel it more.
Here's in a nutshell the scenario why I don't buy EVs so far.
Okay.
Let's say it's 0 degrees outside.
Yeah.
And let's say I got the heater on, I got Motown on, and I'm going to go from here to Aspen, and nobody else is on the road, and I want to get there fast. I got the radar detector. Right. I'm not going to make it.
Right.
Now, on a warm day, being gentle, I could make it maybe there and back.
Right.
But on a cold day, driving aggressively with accessories on, not happening.
So, you came in the other day because there's this rumor that Subaru's bringing the STI back, but as a combustion engine car. So
thank you, Subaru.
Sure. Well, and before when they announced the discontinuation of the STI, they said, well, it's coming back, but it's only going to be as an electric.
Yeah.
And so there's this,
and the Subaru world mourned.
Yes.
We're like, what?
But so here's the question in my mind, and especially now experiencing the Model 3 as I have, is like there definitely are some pluses to the EV platform.
Sure.
And there's nothing wrong with having a choice. Like being able to look at both platforms. Yeah. Okay, well, so now, there's a lot more to compare, and the difference in some ways between like what a Model 3 is and even the Golf R, because they both exist right now.
Sure.
That would be a harder choice in some ways because there's some things that one does better, some things that the other does better, and then there's some trade-offs that you're making certainly with the EV, but then there's some benefits that you're getting. Yeah. In that you plug it in. I mean, one of the things that I realized
that is not a benefit to me.
For certain circumstances,
I would much prefer to spend my 5 minutes pumping gas.
Yeah.
Credit card in, credit card out, and I'm rolling while you, my friend, are there for at least 45 minutes.
30 to 45 minutes, depending on how far you
quick charge. Yeah. And 20 to 80% because you're not going to get a full charge.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that with a supercharger, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're paying more for that energy than I am for gasoline.
I believe if you only supercharge it, it's comparable to the fuel charger.
It's virtually the same.
Or maybe a touch more.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough that I have the ability to plug in the car at my house.
Sure.
And to date, that's all I've had to do. And I've had it for a couple of months. And, basically just I daily drive it. And the advantage to me about plugging in is you start to think of it like a phone. Like, well, I just plug it in at night, and it charges up, and then every morning I get up, and I've got the full charge. So I have 240 miles of range, even at 80% battery.
See, to me, that's a negative, because picturing my car as a phone is like, because with my phone, and I'm always, and we can charge our phone in the car, and that's great.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're always looking for that charge, where it's like, okay, how much percentage do I have left?
So there's a weird thing that I'm getting more comfortable with it, but it's a weird feeling of like a feeling of apprehension when I get down to like 150, 160 miles of range in the EV.
Yeah.
Whereas like on my other cars, the gasoline cars,
Oh,
like
yeah.
I go down to like a quarter tank, not even a blink of the eye, like not even a thought.
Yep.
Like, and my wife hates it, but sometimes I will go until the fuel light comes on, and then like, okay, now I need to start thinking about where's the nearest gas station.
Well, because they're everywhere, and 5-10 minutes if they're packed, you're full of gas.
Yeah.
You're good for another 400 miles or more.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a proliferation of gas stations.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick to refuel. Sure. So the question that I want to ask, let's think about the STI, and let's say that Subaru, we're on Subaru's board.
Okay.
So we're having the discussion around the board.
Dude, the changes we could make.
Because let's be honest, they need us because they're having trouble. But like if they're deciding, whether to make it a gasoline car or an electric car, there's more things to consider, and I think you have to start factoring in the EVs because there's more and more performance EVs that are coming out. I think you cannot design a gasoline car, a combustion engine car, and completely discount the EVs, thinking that the people that want that are just not even going to look at this because they're completely different things. Because now that the driving feel is starting to get better, the acceleration, like they have an advantage in terms of the acceleration. Right. There's more to compare there than you would think. These are not golf carts with doors.
But in the case of the STI, you're talking about more pure enthusiasts.
Sure.
And we're not talking about EV enthusiasts. We're talking about ICE enthusiasts.
Yep.
I mean, in the history of STI is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if I was on the board of Subaru, I would say, okay, we want to make this STI the best one ever.
Yeah.
Like take the S209 and let's do that right. And they could do that. They could make a 400 horsepower, 2.5, 2.4 liter great car.
Yeah. Pretty easily.
Yeah.
And I think this is what the rumors are. And Subaru has always been like the Subaru handles like a Subaru. Like there's a way that a Subaru feels to drive.
Yep.
They've always pretty much consistently made that.
Yep.
And so they could definitely get the car to handle and feel like an STI.
Yep.
And if you give it the beans, well, now it's going to feel like a quick
there you go.
Subaru.
Make it in a stick shift and a twin clutch or an automatic.
Yeah. For
both.
Yep.
There you go.
And it was driving the Golf R, which is a dual clutch.
Yeah.
The biggest advantage of the dual clutch that I hadn't even thought of until I drove it today is that it gives it two personalities. And this is the thing that Subaru, if they only come out with a manual, is like, and a lot of people like it.
Yeah.
And that's a manual car.
And the
that's
hardcore, for that segment.
Yeah.
You may, how many automatics would you sell? I don't know.
Well, let's call it a dual clutch.
Yeah.
Because it is a little bit different because it has this dual personality. It will drive like an automatic.
Yes.
So like you back down the parking space, and it's just like an automatic. You lift off on the brake, and the car goes back. You put it in drive, and it goes forward.
Yep.
It's just like an automatic. But then you want to play with the paddles and control the shifts, and the way that it shifts, like it feels more like a manual because there is an actual mechanical shift that's occurring. Yep. It's being done inside the transmission electronically.
Right.
And so it's like it could be very polite and mannered, and that's one of the things that I like about the Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
In the just like I'm just driving to work. It's just another day. I'm just driving, well mannered, and it's fine. And the Golf R was like that. And then you give it the beans and start shifting, and then now it's on.
Yeah.
Like it shifts personalities.
Yeah.
And Subaru's, because it's like they're missing the dual personality. You have the CVTs,
which
is all just like hey, doody-doo, we're driving to work, we're going to the grocery store, whatever.
How did I get in a snowmobile with 4 doors? Yeah. How did that happen?
Or you have the manual, which is engaging. It feels like you have a lot of control, which is good, but then it's always that.
Right.
You know?
Well, and sadly, the twin clutch or the automatics are faster than the manuals. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Well, and there's a lot of, there's just there's some physics going on that makes that the case. And the biggest thing is that you don't really have to like close the throttle and open the throttle, and electronically they can upshift or downshift way faster than you can.
And typically the ratios are actually better in the automatic or the twin clutch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because you have the better ratios and all of that, you can get better fuel economy.
Yep.
A lot of times if you're manually shifting, you have to either go, do you want really tall gears so you don't have to shift as much, but then that could be worse fuel economy.
Right.
Or shorter gears, but then that could be worse fuel economy too, because you're just always shifting, you're always having to wind the car out. So
and that's one of the things that I was impressed with the new Golf R. It's a 7-speed, whereas my earlier one was a 6-speed, and this one can get 5 more miles per gallon on the highway.
Yeah.
Just because of the lower RPM.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not insignificant.
No.
And I think with Subaru, that's why I think if they're going to bring the STA back as a combustion engine car, they at least have to have the option of the dual clutch, because you can have better fuel economy and the dual personalities. So that you can turn it on when you want it to be on, and you can just kind of like put it into like full on chill mode when you want to just chill out.
Yep.
And that's a big difference.
I was surprised how smooth both cars felt, how close they were, because I thought that the ICE car would be more loud and less smooth than it was. And it wasn't quite as smooth or as quiet as the Tesla, but it was pretty close.
Yeah. And I think that's because the auto manufacturers, I mean, they've gotten really good at isolating noises and killing any kind of vibrations and stuff. And this is like 10, 15 years ago, like there's just a lot more noise and air noise and stuff coming in. And now it's much more refined, even, in entry level vehicles.
Yeah.
Like they've really dialed out a lot of the noise. The EVs have the advantage that, there's just
not
a
making
lot
any noise anyway.
Yeah, it's just tires. You can hear the tires rolling. It's wild driving the Tesla with the windows down because you just hear the shh of the tires. But yeah, which I've come to kind of like the quietness sometimes. But so back to the STI. So what if it wanted to be an electronic vehicle? What would it have to have?
See, or maybe a hybrid. I mean, that's the other alternative that we could talk about. I mean, if you had a hybrid, now power is not an issue because you've got 2 motors. But now weight is an issue because you've got 2 motors. Yeah,
I think there've been performance hybrid cars.
Right.
There's the LaFerrari 918 Spider.
Yep.
McLaren P1, and then there's been a slew of them since.
Sure.
It makes sense. Like, you can really do it. But I've only really seen performance hybrids, like, on that supercar level.
Right.
They've not really brought that level of performance to...
Well, you can get a Toyota Highlander hybrid, I think.
Well, the
plug-in, or RAV4
So the RAV4 plug-in hybrid would probably be the closest.
Yeah.
Because, so with that system, and I know a little bit about them because before we got the new minivan for the family, that was one of the cars that I was looking at.
Oh, yeah.
So that will do 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's got 300 horsepower.
Okay.
And I want to say that the gasoline engine is like 180 or 200 of that, and then the electric motor makes up the difference.
Yeah.
And what's cool about the RAV4 is that you have complete control over what mode you want the car to be in.
Right.
So you can be in full EV mode.
Right.
You can be in basically full standard hybrid mode, and then you can even tell it you want to use the gasoline engine to charge the batteries, even if it's not needed because you've got enough electric power. so that you could then maybe switch back to a full EV mode. Because that car will get like 40 miles on EV only if that's what you want.
And that's the big benefit of the plug-in hybrids. If you're, let's say you're a commuter and you're 20 miles from work, you can go there and back and use no gas.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool.
For sure. And the moment that the charge starts to get low, the combustion engine kicks in and then you just keep on driving. Yep. It's not a big deal. I think that like for a lot of cars, that kind of a hybrid system is like, it makes sense that that's the next iteration.
Well, and for a lot of people, they see it as getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And in that scenario, it is. The reason that I'm not a particularly big fan of hybrids is because of the extra weight of the extra engine and the extra complexity.
Yeah.
If you have a 10-year-old, plug-in hybrid and something goes wrong with it...
Well, the batteries are smaller, and usually, because they're smaller, they're cheaper, and because it's an addition, usually you can get in there and replace it. So that, honestly, the biggest concern for me, if I had a plug-in hybrid, would be, because my drive into work is about 13 miles, give or take. So, like, if I had a RAV4 plug-in...
You'd be the perfect...
Well, that's why we were looking at them. It's like, well, if it's got 40 miles range, in theory, I could drive to work, I could drive home, and I wouldn't need to have the combustion engine kick on unless
and that's when you fell all the way over into the EV pool. That was the moment.
Well, that wasn't exactly... I can tell you the exact moment, but we'll get there. But so the point is, and there are people that use these RAV4s that way.
Yeah.
And it's like if you've got the plug-in hybrid, like a 10-ish, 15-mile commute.
Yeah.
So you're doing maybe 30 miles a day on average. Yep. And so if you just want to plug it in and use EV, there you go. And then you've got the hybrid engine to kick on whenever you need it.
Yep.
My concern is like, okay, 6 months go by. And now finally I need to drive it in Denver, and now the combustion engine has to kick on. Like combustion engines, to the complexity point, like they don't like just sitting there for months and months not doing anything.
Oh.
I feel like you'd kind of want it to kick on more often than not. But if there's somebody that like should have gotten an EV but didn't, and they're using it as an EV, like a year goes on, like it's never kicked in.
And they don't want to use the ICE motor because they wanted an EV, but they didn't buy an EV.
I just wonder, like, if you get to the point where, okay, the combustion engine has run for a grand total of like, I don't know, half a tank of gas in a year. Like, is that actually a good thing?
See, I would guess, and I have no knowledge, but I would guess that the engineers would allow the ICE motor to engage just, to keep it like on a 13-mile trip, maybe for a minute.
Yeah.
Just to get a little gas through it and to keep it in good shape.
Yeah, they probably would do. Or like there's maybe like every week it will like turn on for 5 minutes regardless or something.
Yeah.
Which the engineering of modern cars it's just getting to another level where they would consider stuff like that. They would put it in there. They would do that.
Yeah.
But back to the performance hybrid. I mean, I think there's absolutely room for performance hybrid in this, more compact car, sport compact segment. Especially for a Subaru, because like it could fill in the deficiencies, like where you've got the turbo placement, where you've got this kind of turbo-like issue, which is less prominent with the front-mounted turbos, but if you could use that to fill in the gap so that you have more consistent acceleration.
But see, it feels wrong for an STI to be a hybrid, to me. And I'm a purist, I know.
Well, it would have to be from a hybrid because of the performance that it brings. Not because it gets 40 miles to the gallon, because it makes the overall performance of the car better.
Well, and your point is well taken. If Ferrari can do it, if Lambo can do it, Subaru can do it.
Well, and maybe, let's see, the new 911, is it the base that's the hybrid, but it has the electric turbocharger? So there's now a 911 hybrid that has an electric turbo. Right. And it has a very small battery.
Right.
And it's not really designed to run to go any distance just on an electric motor. The biggest point of it is so that you have a single turbo.
Right.
That's like basically the Formula One car turbos, where you have a motor that can spin the turbo up, and it can actually regenerate some electricity if the turbo's spinning and you don't need it to spin.
Right.
And so this new 911 has this crazy linear power band because like you don't even need anti-lag. It's just like boost whenever you want it. And that would be interesting on the Subaru because then you would have none of this lag issue.
Well, and the funny thing, on a 911 Turbo S, turbo lag's not really an issue.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's it's like minuscule. I mean, they do it really well.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, the Germans, because my BMW 335, which is a twin turbo, it also really doesn't have any turbo lag.
Here's something you'll never that a Porsche service guy will never hear from a 911 Turbo S driver. Roll in. It's got a little bit too much lag. Is there anything you can do about that?
Yeah, no.
No.
Well, and it's just not a problem. I mean, they have the displacement. They're putting the turbos right on the engines. I mean, the engineers have figured this out. But with this electronic turbo that you can spin up, I mean, you can get the turbo to do whatever you want. You now have complete control over the turbo.
Yeah.
Like Subaru with the new WRX with the electronic wastegate and the electronic boost or blow-off valve, though they're starting to get into that ballpark.
Right.
And that's kind of how they're able to manipulate the new WRX to get the flat torque curve. But they can't spin it up. Right. This would be the next level.
The new ZR1 Corvette with the twin turbo.
Yeah.
They keep them spun.
Yeah. But not electronically, just with exhaust flow.
I think electronically by closing off the wastegate and, so you could be at mid throttle, and this is just what I've heard. Obviously, I haven't gotten mine yet.
Yes.
Even at mid throttle, when you roll in, the turbos have enough speed that it's right now.
Right.
So.
And that's the optimal. That's what you want.
Yeah.
They're getting to the point. Auto manufacturers are getting to the point where there's new technologies, there's new controls, there's new ways that they can design the cars to get them to work that way.
Right.
So that you get the efficiency of the turbocharged engine, but you don't have like these issues that you kind of have to drive around to get everything up and moving.
Right.
And if you're at the track and once you're up and moving, it's not really that big of an issue. But it's kind of like that. You only have that one personality. You have to kind of live with it on the street, and then you have to. And then it works well on the track, but like driving around, to go to the grocery store or to work or something like that, it's maybe not as fun as it could be. So there's definitely some differences there, and I think that's maybe the other part of the opportunities that Subaru would have as a redesign in its STI is to try and make this a car that appeals to a broader audience. And I think that's in part why they were thinking EV, or why they initially announced that it was going to be an EV only.
But I don't know whether that's so much of an enticement anymore. I was telling you the other day, Ford is cutting back some of their production of EVs.
I think it's the new development of the EVs. So they're going to stick with what they've got.
Yeah.
But they're not coming out with some...
But, initially it was gun-ho, and this is going to be the future, and everybody's going to want an EV. Well, I think everybody that wanted an EV has pretty much got an EV. Now, I've not done any research on this, but I know they drop like rocks on resale, because
they can.
Who would want... a battery that's halfway gone when for a lot more money you could get a battery that's going to last longer.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
The battery technology is the thing. Like that's the other thing in the back of my mind, which is why Subaru picked such a far out date. Because so to your point about to charging and all that, there's gonna be some point where this next generation of batteries come in, which would be solid states.
Right.
And they have higher energy density, and they don't have the issues with heat that the current lithium-ion batteries and LFP batteries do.
And they can recharge even faster.
Well, because they don't have the issues with heat, you can recharge them faster, and with a higher energy density, some of them that have that are being developed in the lab have 10 times the energy density. So like right now, like the battery in my car weighs about 1,000 pounds.
Right.
very, very possible in a handful of years that you could get the same energy density in a battery that weighs 300 pounds.
Yeah.
And if it's smaller
Yeah.
and you can recharge it faster, like that's where the example that you gave at the beginning of like driving up to Aspen in the winter and back, like as long as you've got some charge point, like 2 or 3 charge points along the way, it's like you would have to fill up with gas 5 to 10 minutes, charge the battery 5 to 10 minutes, and you get the same distance. You're back to full, and you've got the range.
Well, so and here's if this would ever happen, you remember the slot cars?
Yeah.
Those are electric cars.
Yeah.
Just put it underneath the roadway.
Yeah.
Now I'm an EV player, buddy.
I don't know about that because you'd have to replace all the roads, and there's a lot of roads out there, Mike. So I think that one is probably less
not going to happen.
Probably not. But so let's say that there was an STI that had a solid state battery in it, so that you had say 300 miles range, and your 10 to 80% charge took 5 minutes. Like at that point, would that be enough to convert?
It would be. I mean, it would be closer. And if the heating problem was no longer a problem, in other words, let's say you could go full throttle for 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And you could recharge 20 to 80 in 5 minutes, I might try one.
Well, and this is where, of course, I'm biased because it's my Tesla, but it is. You agree? It's faster. It is faster than the Golf R.
Yeah.
To me, it's too fast. Like, holy cow, that 0 to 60 is nuts.
And to me, of course, there's no such thing as too fast.
But
I've never
knowing that that's the level of performance that's there, and I would say that like in from a handling standpoint, from just like how this car feels to drive.
Sure.
Granted, there's no gears to shift, so you're not engaged with the car on that level. But just like you're accelerating, you're braking, you're turning, it's pretty comparable to the Golf R.
Well,
but it's faster.
In the center of gravity, it's better than the Golf R.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can feel it as you're going around corners.
Yeah.
You know, the Golf R is a little tippy compared to, I mean, we were driving them in the rain, so you didn't feel it as much. But on dry pavement, you'd feel it even more.
That's one of the, between my 335 and the Tesla, that low center of gravity is one of the biggest things. Like the steering feel, like the turn-in is very similar to me. But like you can feel the low center of gravity. I mean, it just feels like everything is much lower. The weight is much lower, and the behavior in the corners is just way more controlled.
Oh, yeah.
Like you have to try really hard to get the Tesla to like get a little bit out of shape, whereas the BMW or most like the Golf R, you don't have to push as hard, and it will get a little bit more out of shape because just the weight is not as low. There's a little bit more of a tip going on.
Yeah.
So there's performance benefits, and so like the more that the technology can kind of fill in the gaps to break down these concerns, there are performance benefits to be had with the EVs.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see because electric cars are not new. They've been around for over 100 years, and battery technology still is not where it needs to be for them to be the most desirable vehicle, in my opinion.
And I think there's some big hurdles to overcome, partially just in design. I mean, I think that there's just not been the level of urgency that there is now to kind of solve some of these problems, like the rate of charge and the overall lifespan of the battery. But now they're trying to figure it out.
What does a kilowatt hour of electricity cost? Do you know offhand? Like 15 cents, 17
something
cents.
I want to, it's like something like that, 17 cents. Yeah, and that's the cool thing with the Tesla is I can program it to charge in off-peak hours.
11, with the best lowest rates.
Lowest rates. Yeah. So to date, I've got about 1,500 miles in the car, and my total electricity charge, and again, fortunate enough to be able to just plug it in at night when I need to.
Right.
Total electricity spend is like $55. So to go 1,500 miles.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so, and you know it will get you in other ways, but like just for their propulsion, like if you can plug in at night, it is a noticeable savings.
Well, and I did a comparison way back when I got my diesel wagon.
Yeah.
And an electric car is about half the cost of a diesel wagon, and a diesel wagon is about half the cost of a regular ICE car.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I've gotten 60 miles per gallon on the highway.
Yeah.
And I'm filling up in 5 minutes, but it's still $50.
Yeah.
Just to fill up, 10, 13 gallons. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you get an efficient combustion engine car, or like hybrids, some of these hybrids are getting really, really efficient.
Yeah.
Our customer, friend of the shop, Drew, was in, and he had just picked up a hybrid Ford Maverick. So it's a pickup truck that's a hybrid. And he was telling me that I think on average, it was something on average, he was getting 40 to 50 miles to the gallon. And if it was just driving in town where it could use the electric engine or electric motor more, could get over 60.
Yeah.
And this is a pickup truck.
Yeah.
It's not aerodynamic. It's not low to the ground. It's a truck.
But it's a little pickup truck.
It's a little pickup.
To be fair. Yeah.
But the concept that you can have a truck that gets that kind of fuel economy is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's,
but you could get a turbo diesel Colorado.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you're not going to get quite the same, but you're going to be right there.
In the ballpark.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that one would be all-wheel drive, whereas I think the Maverick is front-wheel drive.
I'm not sure. But yeah, that would be all-wheel or rear-wheel. You can get it either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the technology is coming so that efficiency is going to be less of a concern. But I think it's a valid thought to want something that is more efficient going forward.
Sure. Well, and then the other $100 question is, will the grid be able to handle it? Mm-hmm. California is already having problems. They'll have blackouts because everybody plugs in their electric car. They've got their air conditioning on in the houses because it's hot. We don't have that much electricity.
Right.
So that's got to be solved as well.
And it has to be generated, and as we're sitting here, those, if you're really familiar with Boulder, you might realize, but where we are in the shop, I can actually see the smokestacks from the coal fire power plant that basically creates the electricity for the town.
And when you plug in, you're still burning coal.
Yeah. So it's not a perfect solution.
Right.
For sure. This is going to be something that the change will happen slowly and in phases, but...
Well, and we've talked about this before, and it was a TED Talk on equivalent carbon monoxide, know, and the electric vehicles start out at double or quadruple.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're less because they don't produce it once they've made the car.
Right.
But I think a car with 125 mile of range, you had to drive it 100,000 miles to equal...
I believe it's 40 now.
Okay.
The last one that I saw said that once you have driven about 40,000 miles, you basically are on par for the
But if you have a 400 mile range, then it was and you may be up on it more than me. It's over 200,000 miles.
The bigger the battery, the more of the resources that have to go into it. Yeah, certainly possible.
So it's I get it. Okay, I'm with my diesel car. I'm at the pump, and somebody comes by in an electric car, and they give me that smug look. Well, don't give me that. You've already savaged the planet, my friend. And now, yes, I'm savaging the planet, but I'm doing it a little at a time.
Well, there's trade-offs in each regard.
Yeah. There's no perfect solution.
There's no perfect solution. There's you can use if I was able to put solar panels on my roof and charge my car with solar panels,
sure.
Then that's a big win.
Then it's free.
So
except for the solar panels.
Yeah. That's a whole other discussion. The short answer is it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated, and I think from just an efficiency standpoint, you just have to kind of make the choice that makes the most sense to you.
Yeah.
And what works for you in the time. I guess for me is to bring it back to the enthusiast though. That's the thing that has been the most fun about the Tesla is that I think for me as an enthusiast, there's a lot to enjoy about driving the car.
Sure.
It's not perfect, but there's a lot there like that makes that car fun to drive for me every day.
Well, but see, the amusing thing with you about this car is one of the best things about it you're not going to use because that's too much acceleration. And I can't even hear myself say that.
Maybe I just need to train more and get used to it. And I wonder if, I'll play around with this more, that if I'm the one that I know that it's coming, that I would maybe enjoy it more.
That does help.
Because I do get, I get car sick. Like if I'm just riding, like I tend to get car sick. So I kind of like to be the one in the driver's seat, and then I don't get car sick. And so maybe there's some of the acceleration too. But I mean, just the power that it has. I mean, that was the biggest difference to me going from the Golf R or from the Tesla to the Golf R is that it's you immediately on throttle. You just have the power everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's where it doesn't have to be the mountain of acceleration, because like the times that I've taken this up into the hills and stuff, like it just goes up inclines like nothing.
Yeah.
Like you get into a passing lane, it's just there's no
downshifting, there's no I gotta push harder. No. It just goes.
You just go, and it's you just kind of get used to that. And then we should also talk about the traction control. We kind of touched on it earlier, but that was the one thing that surprised you the most.
Yeah, I mean, we did a launch, and it was raining. Wet. Yeah, I mean, there were puddles.
And it was raining at the time. Like, this is not like a little bit of wetness. No. Like, it was actually raining at the time.
Full wet with a little bit of puddles. Now, not a downpour.
Right.
But it wasn't starting to rain. The asphalt was completely wet.
Yeah.
And I did a full throttle punch launch. There wasn't a spin. There wasn't a
chirp.
I could have been 150 years old and a grandma, and I could have done the same thing. It required no additional skill.
Yeah, it was, and I mean, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah,
but that was kind of not what I expected.
Me either.
You know, and I'm sure that. Well, yeah, I don't think you could get the same result in a combustion engine car.
Well, of course, to be fair, I mean the Golf R did the same thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the same amount of power. Right. So, yeah.
Well, and traction control is one of the things that's in the wheelhouse of an EV, because you have independent control of the axles.
Right.
And it's the way that you have control of an electric motor, you can accelerate it or slow it down.
Sure. Pretty
much at will. Whereas a combustion engine, once it's spinning, it's spinning.
You have to redirect power and all that stuff.
And it's the motion, the power coming out of the engine is pretty much always going to be there.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, and that's where that was surprising. I've got to play around more with the traction control and stuff like that, and because there's a lot of there's menus in there, and there's buttons I can push or sliders that I can slide and take around with
I'm just figuring out how to turn off all the nannies and all the assists on the Golf R. Right. When it goes out to the track or whatever.
Right. This is the automatic braking.
Right.
And the is it the lane assist?
I never turn that on because I don't really care for that. But there's some assists that I'll never turn off, and that's the rear warning.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're backing out of a parking space and you can't see, it will tell you if somebody's coming.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. And the rear camera, of course.
Yep.
The front sensors when you're coming up to a curb, do.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
That's cool. I don't have to get out of the car, and I don't have to park, 2 feet back if I don't want to.
For sure. And it's I get used to that now because the Tesla does all of that, and I have to kind of remind myself when I'm getting into one of my older cars that hey, this is all on me. Like I gotta use my eyes in the mirrors and really focus and pay attention here.
Yeah.
So it's nice having kind of the little extra fill in of the gap so that it's covering the blind spots. That is definitely nice.
Well, and some of that stuff is really good for safety. Mm-hmm. I'm not. I mean, some of it, as we talked earlier, when EyeSight came out, I did some testing, and in most cases it helps. In some cases, it's going to hinder.
Yeah.
And, it just depends. You've got to use common sense when you're driving.
Yeah, we're spoilers. Well, it's not really spoilers, but I've mentioned that we're getting a 24WX and that we should have an any day now.
Oh yeah.
But now eyesight is standard on the 24WX, and so honestly, like before we even like try and turn up the wick or do anything with it, I just want to get in the car for a day or two and just figure out, okay, what does this eyesight do? How does it work? What are the modes? And like, how controllable is it? And one of the other questions are like, okay, if you can turn it off, can you like really turn it off? Because like you were saying with the Golf R, it would come in on track, and so you've got to like figure out how to get into the menus to like, no, that you're really off. Don't do anything.
Yeah. Well, I thought I turned off all the electronic handling, but I didn't turn off the assist, and the assist triggers all of the nannies.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I don't want any of this. Okay, everything's going great. Now you're closing up a car. Warning, Will Robinson. And now everything's back on.
Right.
So now I've figured that out. So I've got everything off that would be a relevant factor in that situation.
And that's the funny thing as an enthusiast is like now, because those kinds of systems are going to become standard.
Right.
Now we have to figure out like how to navigate through these menus to really get the car set up to do what we want it to do.
Well, and it's kind of a pain the first time because it's not easy. Like the old one I had in the Subarus, you just push, you hold it, you're done.
Right.
That's it. Boy, the new ones, it's not that way. Now, of course, after you do it the 10th time, it's no big deal.
Right. But it's something else you got to factor in. It's something else you got to figure out.
Right.
Because, and I think a lot of times it can be beneficial if it's filling in a blind spot or if it's filling in like a gap or like I said with the rear obstacle detection where it's like they're putting cameras and sensors where you cannot have a perception of what is coming there.
There's no way you could do, even with your best driving skill, you couldn't do that. You will not have that information.
Right.
The best you could do is jump out of the car, look, jump back in the car, and hope.
Hope that nothing has changed in those moments. Yeah.
And that's not as good. So some of it I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask this question, but I know the answer. Are you more excited about the combustion engine cars that are coming out or the possibilities of some of these EVs that are coming out?
I mean, I'm excited about the ICE cars, of course. I mean, the EVs, I think we've seen, you're not going to get much faster than a Tesla Plaid or a Porsche Taycan Turbo S. And if you do, no one's going to care because they're going to pass out.
I'll tell you, I now know in spades, like that is not, I don't think that's a selling point for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if you're going 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds,
dude, and if that's not enough.
Yeah, like, if that's not enough. I mean,
you need to take up skydiving at that point.
Yeah, if they come out with one that does 1.8, does anyone care? I mean, I probably would, but
Yeah.
So I think we've seen the best of EVs. Now, once the problems get addressed, recharging, everything we've discussed, then that will put them with that level of performance and safety. Then that will put them in a much more desirable situation.
See, I think it's the thing is with the EVs is that it's not the outright acceleration because it's just picking a battery and a motor combination is really like and if it's not two motors and one battery, it's add an extra motor if that's what it takes.
Sure.
And then you can get pretty much whatever acceleration that you want.
Yeah.
I think that the direction that they're growing in is okay. Now, how can we bring it back to the enthusiast? So you've got the power,
right?
But it's not going to be just about the power. It's going to also be about the handling and the driving experience. And
Lexus has already done that. They've got an electric that only makes 500 horsepower, and it'll go. I've heard. I haven't driven it. It'll go like 20 minutes at pretty much like at 90%.
Well, Hyundai, but that Ioniq 5N, same thing.
Yeah.
Like their benchmark for that car was for it to be able to do 2 laps back to back on the Nürburgring before you ran into kind of any kind of slow down
Right.
or power decrease or anything like that, and it did it.
But see, then the question becomes, because the way that they do it is they don't give you full power. They give you half power.
Well, not in the case of that one. In the case of that car, it was a little bit down, and this is the one that ran up Pikes Peak, and they gave it the full 640 horsepower.
Okay.
And it, basically, one run up Pikes Peak is effectively one lap at the Nürburgring, so it wasn't
Right.
two.
Right.
They didn't get to do 2 runs up back to back, but basically no power change issues at all.
Yeah.
In that 12 miles at full beans going up a mountain.
Yeah.
So that's there.
Yeah.
They've done it, and it's just now more places need to do it. I know that's one of the downsides with the Teslas. It doesn't have the cooling that
Right.
the Ioniq 5N has.
Right.
So it doesn't have that long-term ability.
The Tesla has more power. At least the Plaid does.
Oh yeah.
The 3, it's probably
it's
pretty
less.
okay.
Yeah. So the Ioniq 5N is 640 horsepower. This is 510.
Okay.
But the Ioniq 5N weighs 800 pounds more.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, there's a bit more of a weight penalty, but
because this is what 43 yours.
4,000.
Oh yeah.
I think it's 4,070 pounds is what
Wow.
they say. Yeah, so it's one of the lighter ones.
Yeah.
One of the lighter EVs. But it just doesn't have the cooling built in. I mean, you put it into track mode and there's other fans that kick on, but like you look at the front of the Ioniq 5N, it's got all these much bigger ports to pull in more air. And like the Tesla, they're going for the range, and so they're going for as much aerodynamics as possible. And so there's no, the front grille is like really tiny.
Right.
Really tiny. I think if there was a bigger inlets on the bumper, I think the cooling would be better, just because there's just a lot more air that it can pull in.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I wonder. I was actually thinking the other day that I wonder if aftermarket companies are going to come out with aftermarket bumpers that have bigger inlets, like the cooling thing.
Probably not.
Probably not.
I mean, the demand for such a thing is such a small sliver of the population that I don't see how aftermarket companies would.
Well, you see. Well, we'll see. I mean, it might grow. That was one of the reasons I got the Tesla, or the kind of really. There was a couple factors that really made me decide like this is the one to get, but one of them is because there's so many more of them than most of the others.
Yeah.
Like it's not a niche car or a niche manufacturer. There are literally hundreds of thousands of these things out there. So like if there is going to be an aftermarket, and there is for the Tesla.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the first EVs where it really makes sense for there to be aftermarket support because the numbers are there.
Right.
I was actually just looking. I think it's in GLTC or Grid Life now has a special Tesla class, so they'll let people in their Teslas go out there and run just in their own thing, which is, and the fact that there's a handful of people that are doing it means
it's like, okay, Teslas, go out. Okay, they're done.
Well, maybe. But the fact that there's a class for it and they're letting people go and do it, it's like the ball is rolling. It's starting to move in that direction.
And they're not. I don't think they're going away. I don't think they'll get that much more. People will get that much more enthused about them unless some of the breakthroughs that we talked about happen.
And they have to. Like at some point, I mean, you
well,
generally don't want
hope.
You hope.
Yeah.
You generally don't want to bet against technology. There's a lot of smart people out there working on it. Somebody's going to figure something out, hopefully soon, if they haven't already.
Yeah.
That's going to make some of these next level things happen.
Of course, the other thing is, what if somebody comes out with a water car instead of an ice car? And this is, I've heard,
like the hydrogen.
Yeah, or somebody comes up with something that now doesn't pollute the planet, replaces gasoline and fossil fuels, makes power, and we can put water in it anywhere. Now that changes the entire market.
Yeah.
Now, why would you buy an ICE vehicle? Why would you buy an EV? This is the new flavor of the month.
There's always going to be that possibility for somebody to have that lightning strike moment where like some technology completely changes.
Sure.
Right now, it's combustion engine or electric. There are hydrogen cars out there.
Yeah.
And there's questions about where you can get the hydrogen, but the biggest challenge with those is like, do you basically form it off-site, and then do you have to transport it? That becomes a trick. And then
for central location, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and on one of Jay Leno's things, he said, well, originally there was the horse.
Yeah.
And the horse was the best.
Yeah.
And then the steam car replaced the horse.
Yeah.
And then the electric car replaced the steam car.
Yeah.
And then the ice car replaced the electric car. Yeah. And here we are. Yeah.
And now
so,
it's, yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah.
I think if anybody's listening to this point, the thing that I would say is you should go out there and try both of them.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of naysayers about electric cars for a lot of the reasons we've talked to.
Yeah. And some people have never even driven an electric car, and they hate it. And there's EV people that hate ICE vehicles, and they used to have one, and they're just not being fair.
Well, and the thing is that I now strongly believe that there's a lot of fun things about the EV cars. Sure. Like there's just some parts of the experience that are unique to that, and that I like. I like the way that the power comes on. I don't like the max power. We've definitely discovered that I don't like the full beans.
Yeah, the immediacy.
But I like the way that it comes on. I mean, man, taking it up into the mountains, it's even more fun because it just does it so effortlessly, because the incline doesn't matter. Well,
it's like mentally driving a slot car.
Yeah.
Remember when we used to have the slot cars? Yeah. I mean, they just instantly, and they gave the little whir, and they were really fast. Yeah. Now we're inside.
You're inside, yeah. And I for one, I actually really like the regen braking. I like the feeling of control that gives.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of an annoyance. It's like, no, I just wanted to kind of slow down a little bit. But you adapt. If I drove one for a day, that would be perfectly normal.
And honestly, it took me about a week, because now there's no adjustment, so it's just always there. Right. Like when I drove the Solterra, there you have an adjustment for it, and so
most of them you can adjust the regen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was able to get used to this faster than I thought, and I like. Especially like coming down in the mountains, like just to be able to use the regen.
Yeah,
to control the speed.
Instead of the horror of having to move your foot to the other pedal.
Exactly. Yeah. Who needs brakes?
Yeah.
Who needs brakes?
Oh, I'm all worn out. Oh, I've been going back and forth with these pedals all day.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. Man. Yeah. Well, there's just something there, and I think if you don't try it, you'll never experience it. And it's something where, like, if the best would be like if you got somebody that's got one and you can drive it for like 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah. Instead of like a 5 minute go around the block, you're just not going to get a sense.
It's going to feel odd, and you'll probably come away with more negatives than if you would have driven it a little longer so you could acclimate. Yeah. Then you'll come away with a little bit of a different perspective.
And it's like the same thing with the dual clutch. It's like to actually drive it for a handful of minutes and kind of, okay, this is to experience the different personalities you can get with that drivetrain. Like I now like the dual clutch more than I thought I would going in, because like, okay, there really are, you can just, if I'm tired, I just want to get home, just leave it in auto, and it's an auto, and it's just no fuss, no muss. Yeah. Easy, and you want to turn it on. Yeah. You can turn it on, and then the personality changes entirely. That's cool. Yeah. It's cool to have like a split personality car.
See, and I guess that's what I miss. Even though I love the speed, I love the center of gravity, I'm missing the romance. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no mode that gives you the sound, that gives you the visceral, that's just not there.
And you know that somebody's going to do it. I mean, Hyundai has started to do it where you can pick up a fake engine noise.
Yeah, see, I don't want it to.
But it's so bad. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. What was it? Was it the BMW i8 that, because that was a hybrid 3-cylinder, right. But you could it pumped engine noise through the radio, and you could actually pick I want a V8 or whatever, and it was.
Come on.
But. I don't know. My opinion is I think you'll just find other things that you look for rather than just the engine.
I mean, I wouldn't want that. I would rather adapt to the lack of that and have it be real. Yeah. Than to pipe in imitation sounds. Yeah. That's just me.
Well, I wonder if there will be like some different type of control that comes into an EV that gives you more some kind of equivalent control feeling like a manual shift lever or something like that. I don't know exactly what it would be.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they do that with the CVTs.
Yeah.
They make them so it feels like you're shifting, and you're not shifting.
You're not shifting.
Yeah.
Well, or it's playing with the gear ratios a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I think the hard acceleration, like we were talking about in the car, like, if there was a little bit of a breakup, like, just, like, let you catch your breath, and it wasn't just, like, until you stop, like, it's a lot. It's a lot. I gotta train. I gotta practice. I gotta work up. I gotta figure it out.
Oh, you're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me.
But I didn't pass out.
No, you did not pass out. Okay.
All right. Good. All right. Perfect. Well, all right. So, Mike, as we're winding it down here, any final thoughts about EVs versus combustion engines, or like any final takeaways that you have?
Well, I mean, I would just describe it that in our society currently, both are important. Okay? I mean, you're not going to have a trucking company currently that is all EVs.
Right.
We're not there yet. Could we be? Maybe. Could UPS do all EVs in a localized area? They could. And that might be more profitable than ICE vehicles or whatever they're using. I don't know what they're using. So I think both are important, and it's good to have the choice, and certain people are going to gravitate of the illusion of saving the planet more, and that's cool. There's flat earthers out there and all that, and I'm buddies with everybody, so that's cool. Yeah. But for the hardcore enthusiasts, and there's only a few of us left, there needs to be the ICE vehicles, and I don't see a ban on the sale of them ever happening, at least in my lifetime. Because we're just not there yet.
They're running it through the course right now in California, so we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
So that would be my 2 cents worth of the situation. It's good that we have EVs. It's good that we have hybrids. It's good that we have ICE, and it's good that we have diesel.
And I think as long as the auto manufacturers remember that there are enthusiasts like us that just like to drive, and whatever the platform is that they're developing, they make sure that there's something there for us as enthusiasts.
Sure.
Then we're going to be okay.
Sure.
Yeah, and then it's just a matter of going out there and trying everything and find out which flavor of vehicle you like the best.
Sure.
So, cool. Well, Mike, thanks for coming by.
My pleasure.
Thanks for the spin. Thanks to you guys at home for your support as always. And until next time, stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.